Today's lesson is Sweet Imports, the foreign fruits that took root in Taiwan. Hello, everyone. I'm Mike.
And I'm Roger.
And, of course, Taiwan is a land that is known for its delicious fruits. A lot of people here love to follow the fruits as they come in season, whether it's guava season or pineapple season or some of the other seasons. I know the Japanese people come here and buy those tiny little bananas that we grow here, and they love them. So Taiwan is actually quite well known for being a kingdom of fruit. I think that's a pretty apt name we'll see there in our article. But we're going to actually learn a bit of the history of some of this wonderful fruitful bounty that we have here on the island and how a lot of it was actually introduced to Taiwan. A lot of the things that we take for granted as being natural products produced here, grown here, and enjoyed here actually did not originate here. They were brought here by the Dutch. Very interesting. I mean, because the Dutch weren't really here for that long, were they?
Yeah, just a couple of years during the 1600s.
That's right.
Different times.
But boy, did they love their fruit.
Yes, indeed. They love their fruit. And I think some people actually have Dutch blood here in Taiwan, although it is rare. I think there's an Aborigine tribe in Alishan or something that has a lot of Dutch features in their faces or whatever. I think that's related. But in any case, we're talking about fruit that the Dutch brought to Taiwan. Let's get to it. Let's listen to the first part of our lesson, and we'll be right back.
Sweet imports, the foreign fruits that took root in Taiwan. Taiwan grows so many kinds of fruit that it's sometimes even called the Kingdom of Fruit. Yet many of the fruits enjoyed in Taiwan today are not native to the island. In fact, several popular varieties were introduced by the Dutch during their 17th century colonial rule, an influence that continues to shape Taiwan's agriculture to this day.
大家好，第一部分介绍形容词 colonial， 它的意思是殖民的或是殖民主义的。例如 The colonial settlers established farms and plantations in the new territory. 殖民定居者在新的领土建立了农场和种植地。或者 The colonial period left lasting impacts on the cultures and social structures of nations around the world. 殖民时期对世界各国的文化和社会结构产生了持久的影响。另外补充这个字的名词 colony, C-O-L-O-N-Y, colony, 指殖民地。举例来说 The country has colonies all around the world. 该国家在世界各地都有殖民地。再一句Someday there might be a space colony on the moon. 未来月球上可能会有太空殖民地。下一个看到名词 agriculture 表示农业。例如 Most of the land in that region is used for agriculture. 那个地区大部分的土地都是用于农业。或是 People who live in this area depend on agriculture. 居住在这个地区的人以农业为生。另外补充这个字的形容词agricultural, A-G-R-I-C-U-L-T-U-R-A-L, agricultural, 指农业的。造个例句 The region is known for its rich agricultural produce, including fruits and vegetables. 该地区以其丰富的农产品闻名，包括水果和蔬菜。另一句 Frank is a mechanic who specializes in repairing agricultural machinery. Frank 是专门维修农业机具的技师。
Okay, so here in the first part, we're talking about foreign fruits that took root in Taiwan. Interesting use of that term, to take root. Of course, when plants start to grow on the ground, they take root. You could also say an idea takes root. It becomes widely accepted by lots of people. But in this particular case, it kind of has a double meaning. The fruit actually did take root. They started to grow in Taiwan, but also they became established here, and now they're very much part of the culture.
There you go. So yes, they've taken root in many ways. And yeah, when we introduce things from outside cultures and then they become accepted in a new country, that's the way we might use it. As an immigrant, you might take a few years to take root in your new country. Or, things that are introduced from abroad. For example, bubble tea has taken root in many countries in the West. You can find it in all sorts of places, and it's no longer seen as exotic. It's just another thing that people love to enjoy on a day-to-day basis. So it's been accepted into its new land. So let's see what it's all about. Taiwan grows so many kinds of fruit fruit that it's sometimes even called the kingdom of fruit. There you go. I think that's a pretty accurate statement. There are lots of different kinds of fruit. You can always find something fresh that's in season no matter what time of year. And sometimes I guess people do call Taiwan the kingdom of fruit. I've heard it also called the kingdom of butterflies because we have an amazing number of different types of butterfly here. So, it's something that the place is famous for. Taiwan is famous for its many wonderful kinds of fruit. Yet, the article says, however, many of the fruits enjoyed in Taiwan today are not native to the island. Okay, so they weren't naturally things that were found here. If the fruits are native to the island, you could probably go back thousands of years, maybe tens of thousands or even longer back into history and find that's where these things come from, and maybe they were taken from here and introduced in other places. But a lot of the fruits apparently that we grow, that was not the case. They were not here thousands and thousands of years ago. They were introduced through a deliberate act of people, and that's what we're going to learn about with the Dutch here.
Yep, they brought the seeds and started to plant them here in Taiwan, and the rest is history. Here in the next sentence it says, in fact, several popular varieties or kinds of fruit were introduced by the Dutch during their 17th century colonial rule, an influence that continues to shape Taiwan's agriculture to this day. So remember, the Dutch were here in the 17th century for a little bit of time, maybe 20 years at the beginning, and then a couple of years later, just for a couple of years or so. So they were kind of in and out of Taiwan. I think they were mostly down south, whereas the Spanish were up in the north or something. They fought with each other and things like that. I think most of you know the history of these countries in Taiwan. But yes, the Dutch came and introduced these fruits to Taiwan in the 17th century, and that was during their colonial rule. Okay, that means Taiwan was a colony of the Netherlands. And if we talk about somebody coming from the Netherlands or from Holland, we say that they are Dutch. I myself have Dutch ancestry on my father's side. He has got a lot of Dutch influence there. I used to be kind of ashamed of that because they wear those wooden shoes and they have those windmills and those tulips and things like that. Everybody I grew up with all had German ancestry, the big tough Germans. Well, I'm actually Dutch, but now it's pretty cool to be Dutch. Of course, the Dutch people are pretty laid back, pretty cool to hang out with and things like that. So yes, indeed, the Dutch were here in the 16th century during their colonial rule, and they brought these different kinds of fruit here. And yes, we're talking about how they have shaped Taiwan's agriculture to this day. Agriculture just talks about growing plants in order to produce food.
There you go. Absolutely. A lot of the farms and farmers in Taiwan even today make their money, make their livings, and of course we, the customers, enjoy all of these wonderful fruits introduced by the Dutch back in the 1600s. Let's find out exactly which fruits we're talking about in the next paragraph. Among the fruits introduced by the Dutch were guavas, sugar apples, wax apples, and mangoes. Originally from tropical parts of South America and Southeast Asia, they were brought in to establish profitable crops for trade. These new fruits made Taiwan's agricultural landscape much more varied and helped the island become a major fruit producer. The Dutch colonial period certainly had many negatives, but it had a positive impact on Taiwan's fruit cultivation. The introduction of new fruits not only improved local farming, but also played a vital role in the growth of Taiwan's modern fruit industry.
第二部分介绍形容词 profitable， 表示有利可图的或是有收益的。我们可以说 William turned a hobby into a profitable career. William 把兴趣变成可获利的职业。又或者说 Anne has built up a profitable business selling sweaters she knits herself. Anne 贩售自己织的毛衣，建立了一个赚钱的生意。
Okay, so here in the next part of our lesson, we tell you exactly what those kinds of fruit were or are. Among the fruits introduced by the Dutch, were guavas, sugar apples, wax apples, and mangoes. Okay, this is kind of surprising. I just figured guavas are native to Taiwan, and I thought the sugar apples were as well. Wax apples and mangoes, I thought they all came from Taiwan because Taiwan is a subtropical country. It's no doubt going to have some of these exotic kinds of fruits. Guava is bala in Chinese. A sugar apple is the one that kind of looks like the head of the Buddha. So that's shijia, sugar apples. We've got wax apples, which I think are lian wu in Chinese, and mangoes, of course, we all know those are mango, which only come out during the summer.
Of course. But yes, as you said, fruits that are quite famous in Taiwan, and I'm surprised that they were all introduced by the Dutch. Where were they brought from? Well, that's also interesting, basically from all around the world. It says originally from tropical parts of South America and Southeast Asia, they were brought in to establish profitable crops for trade. So originally from tropical parts, from, of course, warm parts. When we say tropical, we mean between the tropics, the Tropic of Cancer in the north, the Tropic of Capricorn in the south, and the equator right around the middle of the earth. So think about the warmest, wettest parts of the earth. Places like Taiwan with weather and climates like Taiwan. So we're in South America, Central America, South America, places like that. I think the Dutch still have a colony, Curacao or something, in the Caribbean Sea over there in South America. So that's one place that the fruits came from, way across there. And also a little bit closer to home here, Southeast Asia. I think the Dutch were also in charge in Malaysia, Indonesia, Java, places like that. So they brought fruits from those parts of the Southeast Asia, brought them across over to Taiwan, and they were brought in to establish profitable crops for trade. This is kind of how you do colonialism. You settle a land, and then you find something to exploit on that land, either something that's there naturally, or you introduce things and you grow them because it's a good place to grow, and then you sell those things. So they were brought in, they were imported or introduced, which is another way we would describe bringing in a new species, a new type of plant or animal to a region where it isn't normally found. They were introduced or brought in to set up or to establish profitable crops for trade. Because yes, it's all about making money. Mangoes are delicious, but we don't just want to make mangoes for our breakfast. We want to make mangoes, and lots of them, to sell. And if you sell something, or if you're in a business and you're making more money than it takes to run the business, then your business is profitable. Then you are actually earning money. You aren't losing money. And crops for trade that can make you money, that you can sell, that are desirable in other parts of the world and can earn you an income, that is great for trade or for business.
Yep, so maybe the native fruits in Taiwan would not be profitable, so the Dutch brought in some other kinds from neighboring countries and from South America, and now we have those fruits here in Taiwan that farmers here can grow and make a profit from. And these new fruits made Taiwan's agricultural landscape much more varied and helped the island become a major fruit producer. Now here we've got the word landscape, which could actually refer to the land itself, but here landscape is kind of like the scope of something, the general area of agriculture. So yes, it had this agricultural landscape, their general characteristics of their agriculture, their industry. And of course, this made their landscape much more varied. And then as a result, Taiwan became a major fruit producer. They started to export fruit abroad.
There you go. The Dutch colonial period certainly had many negatives, but it had a positive impact on Taiwan's fruit cultivation. Yes, the Dutch colonial period, the period when the Dutch government, the Dutch kingdom, was trying to settle Taiwan, wasn't all good. It had many negatives. I think there were obviously wars, there was fighting, I think there were massacres of native Aboriginal people, so it wasn't an entirely successful experience for the Dutch to be in Taiwan, for either the Dutch or the Taiwanese, and they left after not too long, so clearly it wasn't a full-on success, but it had a positive impact. It did have some good things about it, or positive effects, or a positive impact on Taiwan's fruit cultivation. So the Dutch may have gone home, but the fruits that they brought, things like mangoes mangoes and guavas. They stayed after, and so that, of course, was good for Taiwanese people and for farmers and for the local fruit scene, the local fruit landscape and marketplace, and just choices for customers that we're still enjoying today. And this is all about the growing of fruit cultivation. We could also here just say Taiwan's fruit agriculture or something like that, but cultivation is actually the growing of crops. So you plant the crops, you water the crops, you wait for the crops to grow, you collect, chop, reap, whatever, collect and harvest the crops, and that is the end of the cycle. And then you do that over and over and over again, and you have an agricultural industry, and that has survived the Dutch, and that has been good for Taiwan. The introduction of new fruits not only improved local farming, we mentioned the agricultural landscape was more varied, so that improved local farming, but it also played a vital role, a very, very important role, or a crucial role in the growth of Taiwan's modern fruit industry. So the fact that Taiwan exports millions of dollars of fruit to other parts of the world, that has a direct link back to the Dutch, and of course that has been good for the economy and for people living on the land.
It kind of makes me wonder what kinds of fruit were actually native to Taiwan versus the ones that were actually brought in. But we'll talk about that some other day. It's time now to move on to the third part. We will listen first and wrap things up.
Today, these once foreign fruits are deeply rooted in the island's culture. They serve as a reminder that historical exchanges, however complex, can yield enduring and fruitful results.
第三部分看到动词 yield， 意思是产生效益、成果，也可以是带来的意思。例如 The company's acquisition of a rival yielded a larger market share. 该公司并购一家对手后，获得更大的市场占有率。再看一个例子 Mrs. Green's garden yielded plenty of fruits and vegetables this year. Green 太太的花园今年结出了许多蔬果。最后看到形容词 enduring， 指持久的、不朽的或是历久不衰的。举例来说 Nathan wants to write enduring novels. Nathan 想写出历久不衰的小说。或者 The teacher had an enduring effect on her students. 那位老师对他的学生有深远的影响。
Okay, so here's the third and final part of our lesson for today. It says, Today, these once foreign fruits are deeply rooted in the island's culture. That much is true. Even I did not realize that these fruits, wax apples and mangoes and guavas, were all from outside of Taiwan. I did not know that myself, but they are definitely rooted in the culture of Taiwan. I think a lot of people here just assume that those kinds of fruit are actually from Taiwan as well.
Yeah, I think we mentioned that we both thought the guava are a native fruit and not one that was introduced. But these fruits, they serve as a reminder that historical exchanges, however complex, can yield enduring and fruitful results. So there you go. It's sort of a benefit of history and a reminder. It reminds us, it makes us remember that historical exchanges, right, when people and cultures from different parts of the world meet and exchange and trade things and learn from each other, it can be very complex. And I think here complex is also kind of referring to the fact that it's not always successful. Problems do result when people from one part of the world move to another part of the world and interact with both the new land and the people who are in that land. It is complicated, it is complex, and it isn't always positive for both sides, but it can yield or it can produce enduring and fruitful results. So something yields something, yes, it produces, we get that as a result of it. We often use this word actually to talk about farmers' fields. This field can yield 3 crops a year because the growing season is very long or something. It can produce 3 crops. So this cultural exchange can produce enduring or long-lasting and fruitful and positive results. And of course, there we have that little play on the word fruitful, right? Of course, it's producing fruit, but fruitful is also a word that is just talking about something that is good and positive. It was a fruitful conversation. It was positive. Good things came out of it. And in this case, the good things coming out of it are fruit. And these are enduring or long-lasting. Here we are, 400 years after the Dutch, still enjoying the fruit they introduced. confused.
It makes me want to run out to my local fruit stand and buy some mangoes. Unfortunately, it's not mango season now.
When is mango season?
It's in the summer usually.
Okay.
It ends like in early September or so. I'm always disappointed when they say, nope, no more mangoes. Sorry, the season's over. You'll have to come back next year.
And it does seem very short.
It does seem short indeed.
Season,
but of course, there are other kinds of fruit that are in season all year round. So, of course, we don't need to be disappointed at all. That brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Here comes Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第一部分提到，好几种受欢迎的品种是在17世纪荷兰殖民统治期间引进的，这个影响至今仍持续形塑台湾的农业发展。这句它用到 to this day 表示至今直到今天，它就跟 until now 或是 to date 或是 up to now 意思相同。那这边还有用到名词 agriculture 来表达农业。而在课文第二部分则提到，荷兰殖民时期当然有许多负面影响，但对台湾水果的种植产生了正面的影响。这句它用到 have a positive impact on 来表达对什么有正面影响。当我们用 have an effect 或者是 have an impact on 加上名词，就可以表达对什么有影响。那么 effect 跟 impact 前面可以搭配形容词，像 negative 负面的， positive 正面的， huge 巨大的等等，或是其他形容词形容它影响的好坏啊，或是程度。那句子里面它还有用到一个单字cultivation 是名词，它表示耕种、培育或栽培，它的动词是 cultivate。 好，那我们刚刚有提到 agriculture 跟 cultivate 这两个字，有没有发现它们当中都有 cult？ 我们就来介绍这个字根。 cult 它带有耕种的意思，像 culture 它就是从耕种演变出涵养，那到了19世纪初才开始用来表示文化。另外 col原本也有耕种的意思，后来演变成居住的意思，像 colony 殖民地就是从古罗马时代位于意大利以外的开拓地所衍生而来的。好，那我们现在来看看 cultivate 它的字根 cult 表示耕种，那么 iv 或 ive 是形容词字尾，ate 是动词字尾，那合在一起 cultivate 是当动词，它表示耕作或是种植，它还有培养陶冶的意思。至于 agriculture 它的字首 agri 表示 field 田地，那么字根 cult 表示耕种， ure 是名词字尾，田地的耕种应该就可以联想到 agriculture 它表示农业。看到课文第三部分，他提到如今这些曾经外来的水果已在本岛的文化中根深蒂固，那他们提醒我们历史上的交流无论多么复杂，也能带来持久且丰硕的成果。文中用到 serve as a reminder， 它表示作为提醒，发挥提醒作用，那名词 reminder 就表示提醒的事物。那至于我们用 serve as 加名词，它可以表达充当担任的语义，就跟 function as 加名词或是 act as 加上名词意思差不多。好，那以下介绍两种用法。第一个，当主词是事物时，表示作为什么什么使用，充作什么，充当什么，像 humor can serve as a tool to lighten the mood， 幽默可以作为一种缓和气氛的工具。第二个，当主词是人的时候，表示担任什么什么职务，例如 Dave has served as the team's coach for 7 years， Dave 担任那支球队的教练已经7年了。好，那以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天单字吧。
Colonial. Professor Hall's book focuses on the colonial influence of France in Southeast Asia. Agriculture. Climate change has greatly affected local agriculture around my hometown. Establish. It can take many years and lots of hard work to establish a good relationship with a client. Profitable. The new deal is expected to be highly profitable for both companies. Landscape. A variety of new technologies have recently caused major changes to the business landscape. Yield. After weeks of practice, the coach's efforts finally yielded positive results for the volleyball team. Enduring. Dr. Montgomery's speech left an enduring impression on the audience.
Discussion Starter starts now!
It's time now for our discussion starter, and the question is, do you believe it's important to preserve native crops, even when foreign ones become more popular, and why?
I would say yes. I believe it's crucial to preserve native crops since everyone loves some choice. It's always nice to have new fruits and vegetables at the store to try out. And also, I think it's just good for the environment. These native crops are probably a little bit tougher. They've been living and growing in that environment for centuries or for millennia. So there's a good chance that with diseases or climate change, some of the native crops might survive a little bit more easily. So it's just wise, I would say, as well.
Yeah, it does seem that a lot of fruits are from outside of Taiwan. But in any case, I guess it's a good idea to bring these kinds of fruit into Taiwan because, hey, if you can make money, it's a great idea. Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I am Mike.
See you next time.